The following review has been approved by Lord Carnage and the best of Classic Game Room. Welcome to Classic Game Room, where I'm armed and ready to review the Nintendo Entertainment System. Power up! Released in 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System was the hot game system in the mid to late 80s, at least in the United States. Its iconic shape, flip-up door, and ejecting games are what an entire generation remembers as its first game console. Who can forget this design? Just look at it. Nothing else looks remotely like the NES. I think that it's Nintendo's best-looking game console by far. In fact, it's even better looking than the Wii. It's true. I love the type font on the buttons. I like the look of the controller ports. I like everything about the NES. Especially Contra and Bionic Commando. It'll work with line-out audio and video or an RF adapter. Many of us just refer to this thing as the Nintendo. But this is not my Nintendo. I'm actually borrowing Derek's for this review because my Nintendo is broken. A common problem with these after about 30 years. What made the NES worth owning back in the day was its amazing collection of games. Releases started out slowly in 1985 as the US was emerging from a video game recession. In a few years' time, the NES library would boast hundreds of titles, many of which remain iconic classics to this day. Here's a look at just a few of them. And apparently Nintendo was more selective about what games would end up on its system, unlike Atari. So always look for the official Nintendo seal of quality. But wait, did you know the NES wasn't always the NES? In 1983, Nintendo released the 8-bit family computer, which is basically the NES. Except it looks like this. I like the styling on the NES a lot better. But I do admire these controllers, they're kind of cool. It's too bad they got rid of that little ejecting thing for the NES, but at least it returns on the Super Nintendo. If you were a kid in the US in the mid-80s, there was only one game system to own. The Atari 7800 Pro system. When I was a kid, I chose Atari because I loved Atari. And it was cheap in about 1987, 1988 because nobody wanted one. The NES was expensive. But wait, a lot of you chose another option, the 8-bit Sega Master System. Commercially, at least in the United States, the NES destroyed them all. Thanks largely in part to third-party support and amazing games like... oh no, this one came out many years later. Disregard that. What I like about the NES, in addition to the games, are its cool peripherals like the NES Advantage, the NES Zapper. Even the gamepad is pretty nice. How about the Power Glove and Rob the Robot? I don't have Rob the Robot, and the Power Glove that we do have around here doesn't work, but it would be cool if it did, right? I mean, just imagine a future dominated by roaming Rob the Robots and Power Gloves that actually worked. It would be amazing. It would be the NES Advantage. So let me get this straight. You want NES fanboy Mark to sit here and play Twin Cobra with the NES Advantage all day? Okay. Woo! Before you just downloaded video games from the internet, playing NES was an experience because the cartridges themselves were cool. Many of them had nice artwork, they had those cool ridges, and you would push them into the NES and then lock them down into place. Don't forget to close the blast shield to protect yourself from all the 8-bit power. But is it worth owning today, since there's a wide variety of ways to play these games? Well, purists will say yes. Just be prepared to replace those 72-pin connectors if they go bad. Hey, if you want the real NES experience and you're gonna play with the Zapper and the Advantage, you want the real NES. Performance-wise, it's great. It's the NES. I think most of you watching have played it before. It's good. There's really no question. Yes! Of course, that also depends on what game you're playing. I've seen C-beams burning off the coast of Jersey. The best thing about the NES is its enormous collection of games. We've got everything from Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt to Twin Cobra and World Games and Bionic Commando and Operation Wolf and so many more. Great games, great peripherals, great design, great performance. What's not to love about the NES? Sure, it might be prone to breakage after about 3 or 4 decades, but what isn't? Couldn't resist that one, come on. Sure, there's other ways to enjoy the Nintendo games these days, but there's only one NES. Actually, there is more than one, but this is the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Happy hunting, because they still hold their value. At least the ones that are still working after all these years. You've got to have respect for antique, obsolete technology that still functions. I think that last comment was aimed at me. I'm obsolete, but I kind of function most of the time. Better than the Power Glove, at least. This thing doesn't work at all. Oh, no, my bad. It turned off the review. The best of classic Game Room is on DVD, Blu-ray, and Laser Hypervision album set. What's this button do? Whoa. What happens if the Power Glove and these Sonic hands touch each other? Servant